Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. EU leaders show strong support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at Brussels summit, discussing use of frozen Russian assets for $163 billion reparation loan to Ukraine. The EU also plans a new sanctions package against Russia, including a ban on Russian LNG from 2027, while Kyiv seeks autonomy over how the loan funds are spent. Syrian authorities have arrested a former military officer accused of executing detainees at the notorious Saidinaya prison during the rule of ousted leader Bashar al-Assad. The prison belongs symbolic of Assad's brutal repression, which has been linked to thousands of torture and execution cases. Israeli lawmakers have the advancement of West Bank annexation bills as global pressure mounts for Israel to comply with the ICJ ruling on Palestinian rights. UN Chief Antonio Guterres has urged Israel to abide by the court's decision, while UN rights expert Francesca Albanese has condemned the US-brokered Gaza ceasefire plan as inadequate to stop what she called a genocide. WHO has led the medical evacuation of 41 critical patients and 145 companions out of Gaza, according to WHO Director General. He further added that around 15,000 patients remain awaiting evacuation and called on countries to open all routes and show solidarity to expedite medical assistance for Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hints at opposition to any Turkish security forces being deployed in Gaza during a meeting with UN on the second day of Vance's visit. Israel has also buried more than 50 bodies handed over, while Vance has expressed optimism that the ceasefire will hold, and US Senator Marco Rubio is expected to visit Israel soon. US President Donald Trump has said he expects to reach a trade deal with Chinese President Xi Jinping during their meeting next week in South Korea. Trump has also plans to discuss China's purchase of Russian oil and possibly restart US soybean export. He also mentioned that a deal on nuclear arms could be on the table. China has overtaken the United States as Germany's top trading partner, even as German exports to China fell 13.5% and imports rose 8.3%. While US tariffs cut German exports by 7.4%, Berlin now faces growing concerns over shifting global trade dynamics amid escalating economic and security tensions between Beijing, Washington, and Europe. China has announced it will celebrate the 80th anniversary of Taiwan's retrocession to Chinese rule this Saturday at Beijing's Great Hall of the People, marking the island's 1945 return from Japanese colonial rule, according to them. However, Taiwan has banned officials from attending, accusing Beijing of distorting history for political purposes. Now we start with Ukraine and Russia. Russia has reported that the death toll from an explosion at a military plant near the Ural city of Chelyabinsk has now risen to 12 people. According to national reports, the incident took place yesterday and also left 5 people injured. Local authorities have also confirmed the explosion, and the governor of Chelyabinsk, Alexei Texler, has stated that the fire has been already extinguished. Governor Texler has also assured that there was no threat to citizens, city residents, or civilian infrastructure in the aftermath of the blast. Additionally, Russian investigators have opened a criminal case into this incident, but there is no evidence linking the explosion to any drone activity. Meanwhile, in a separate development, Russian forces have reportedly shot down 139 Ukrainian drones overnight. Further on the matter, the Defense Ministry has said that the drones were taken out across several locations, but it has not yet released specific details on the impact of these attacks. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Sergei Dvoryanov. He's the president of IDC Russia and director at WHD International Board, joins us live from Moscow. Thank you very much for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, looking back at this, what more do we know about this? Is there any connection of this to Ukraine as well?
Yes. First of all, I want to tell that for us, victory in this conflict, because we're not calling this conflict a war, it's a special military operation. We did not start with our aggression. We start with our intention to protect Russian-speaking population of the eastern part of Ukraine. That was our intention and historical mission. And that's why I want to tell that it's ontological question for us, our victory in this conflict. Is a question to be or not to be of our civilization. In this ontological question, of course, we are ready to pay any price to receive our victory, because according to the history, we can see that our civilization always in the conflicts with eastern part of the world and western part of the world, because we have most biggest territory, most biggest land. And we was blessed by God to be rich, not only with land, but also with our spirit of victory. And we are a nation of victors. We always celebrate our victory in the Second World, in the First World, in any conflicts where always was a victory, because we always support justice. That's why we can see that in this conflict, of course, from the one side, we should understand, from one side we have some globalistic, very influenced society. They won't destroy the world, and they won't take all treasures from Russia, and they won't destroy all human values. From the second part, we have civilization like China, India, Russia, traditional civilizations. And right now, Russia is not fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for all traditional world. That is my understanding of the conflict like a philosopher. I can understand that we are ready to pay any price because it's ontological questions to be or not to be.
And Doctor, now how do you look at the frozen Russian assets fund that, or frozen Russian assets that are in the tables of European leaders discussing support for Ukraine today? How do you see it, and do you see it as this move could escalate the conflict further?
First of all, should understand that mentality of all European leaders there right now, unfortunately, sorry to say this, but they're completely different. They want to steal our assets. It's completely illegal. It's against any law, international law, divine law, whatever, human law. And even they should understand that all other countries, after this action, they will think a lot of times, put their assets to European banks, and if they can trust to European government, that can be very bad reaction from different leaders around all the globe. That's why for us, our main assets is not money. Our main assets, our will, because our will based on our moral values. That's the main assets of Russia, you see. And of course, they want to steal everything. They want to destroy it. We completely understand their intentions. They put Ukraine in front in conflict with Russia because they want to steal all our national resources, like oil, gas, wood, whatever we have, they want to steal completely. That's why it's a question of their behavior. They destroyed all international law, all regular rules. That's why, of course, they cannot be winners in this situation because they will have very bad reactions from global society. I completely believe to this.
Yes, indeed. And Doctor, now looking at where, if supposedly, if trilateral summit between Zelensky and Trump and Putin were to happen, or the bilateral between Putin and Trump were to happen, where could that be? As we see, EU has differing national interests among them, and they have different contrasting opinions about this.
First of all, we can see that our national leader is very brave. Even last time he met Mr. Donald Trump, President of America, in Alaska. It was the previous our Russian land. By our generosity, we gave this land with a very cheap price to America. Russian king delivered this land to America. It was like our gift, we can tell. And our national leader is ready. He is a global peacemaker, we should understand. He started with this special military operation because he wants to bring peace and achieve peace in eastern part of Ukraine with our neighbor. That was his intention and his action. And in the current situation, for my opinion, best country to negotiate peace, of course, is Bharat-Varsha, is India, because you have very good and very deep traditions in India, ahimsa, and you have a very good philosophical concept about peace, like Shanti, Om Shanti Om. In the first peace start with the peace inside our hearts. We should bring peace to the politicians like Zelensky and others, very aggressive Europe elite. They're very aggressively looking for our assets right now. They're very greedy, by the way, very greedy. And we should bring some spiritual education to them. That's why India, for my opinion, most favorite country to negotiate with peace. But Mr. Zelensky, he's very scared personality. He afraid to come to Moscow. Of course, it can be very reasonable if after visit Vladimir Putin to America, Donald Trump should come to Russia. Obviously, it's very reasonable. He should come and sit, and because he already visited our country a lot of times. But we understand that Mr. Zelensky, I cannot call him President Zelensky. He is not president anymore. He already lost his legacy. But the main question, if we will start to negotiate with peace, who will put signature on this agreement? Because President Zelensky is not anymore president. He is a formal president. He is actually, for my opinions, he is a criminal because he destroyed his nation. He bring death to his nation and
Yes.
destruction. That's why is a big question mark about
Yes.
him. But for my opinion, most favorite place is India, Bharat civilization, Bharat-Varsha.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Sergei Dvaryanov, for joining us and sharing that insight all the way from Moscow. Now we move on to our next news. The U.S. government shutdown has entered its fourth week, marking the second longest in history. As Congress remains at an impasse, federal workers, including 63,000 air traffic controllers and TSA agents, are bracing for missed paychecks. The shutdown is causing growing concerns for air safety, with significant delays already reported due to staffing shortages. The Federal Aviation Administration recently issued a ground stop at 2 airports in Houston, citing staffing issues. Meanwhile, Democrats and Republicans remain locked in a dispute over funding and health insurance subsidies with no resolution in sight. As the stalemate drags on, Senate Republicans are under increasing pressure to adjust the rule to pass a funding resolution, though Democrats have vowed to block the measure. The shutdown is continuing to cripple essential services, and its effects are being felt across the nation. Now for this discussion, we welcome Rupinder Sachdev. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this news, what's going on with U.S. government? Has partisanship made this government ungovernable? And what do you think about what should U.S. government prioritize now?
Well, not the U.S. government, but the U.S. politicians must prioritize now to, come to a mutual agreement. Because it's when the politicians come together, that is the U.S. Congress comes together, releases the budget, that the U.S. government can function, right? The money is allocated to the various arms of the U.S. government.
Yes.
Now, so the thing which has to be done is that the Republicans and Democrats have to sit down and hammer out a bill on which they are both absolutely tooth and nail opposed to each other. Also, in some ways, it gives, President Trump. Now, why is this all happening? Other than, of course, the issue of the spending limits, the health insurance limits, and such. This gives Donald Trump, I think, also a chance to lay off some federal employees down the line. Because right now, many of the employees are either work from home or are not supposed to come into the office. So with these employees absent, to what extent can the federal government run? I think that's also one thesis that Donald Trump is testing out. But yes, what it means is that public services will suffer, many of them. But especially air travel is one public service which is very visible, right? People at airports, flights getting delayed and all. It's something which you see which is there in your face.
Yes.
Other services are also being curtailed, many of them, but they're not so visible. So air travel is perhaps the number one visibility of the shutdown right now.
Yes, and are American workers and public safety, are they being sacrificed? Should they show up to work for political leverage? And can bipartisan compromise still exist in Washington's polarized climate?
Sure. Yeah, Washington is very, very much polarized, absolutely. But at some point of time, they will have to come to a consensus between the Republicans and Democrats to pass the budget bills. Now, till what time would they, kind of extend, delay, or hold off? We just don't know. And given Trump and the way his decisions are, he might stake out for a long-term shutdown. He may say, okay, it doesn't matter. But it could matter to him because public will get affected. And once again, let's say, take the example of the air travel industry. Right now, you see, it's not only a matter of air traffic controllers are less in number, reporting to duty, or are overburdened or tired, could make mistakes. It is also because airlines is a very regulation and safety-driven industry. There have to be regular maintenance checks, there have to be regular safety checks, regular certifications and trainings which should be going on. With time, those are quote-unquote non-essential services, so they are being halted, and which will further lead to even more delays. So coming weeks, we could see air travel in America getting even more problematic and troublesome and delayed, and people being harried as a result of the shutdown. That would be one impact that we can see.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Sir Rupinder Sachdev, for sharing that insight as an international affairs expert. Now we move on to our next news. Protesters in Chicago have confronted Gregory Bovino, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commander, on Wednesday morning. Bovino was on patrol with dozens of agents when a car crashed. While waiting for police, protesters shouted insults and demanded agents remove their masks. Two protesters claimed an agent sprayed a substance out of his vehicle window as the convoy left the scene. Tensions in Chicago have been high as the Trump administration increases immigration enforcement efforts, arresting immigrants without criminal records. A federal judge in Chicago has questioned immigration officials this week about the use of tear gas and forceful tactics against protesters. Let's in fact listen in to some of the protesters.
Somebody was talking to them, and then they might have hit the window. Like the officer sticked out his hand and he sprayed them. So obviously the wind kind of got it towards my face. So
way they shot it out the window, and then with the wind it just came towards us. And I saw when they sprayed, so I turned around.
Now we stay in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that his administration has the legal authority to strike vessels near Venezuela suspected of transporting drugs, but may seek congressional approval if land targets are involved. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump has emphasized that the U.S. is totally prepared to target drug traffickers by land and could approach Congress for formal approval. He has also warned of serious action against Colombia over its role in the narcotics trade. Let's listen in.
And drug usage is way down, and drug usage coming from the sea, they call it ocean drugs, a little term that they use, the ocean drugs, is very close to non-existent right now. I wouldn't want to be in one of those boats heading away, you know, they're driving happily to destroy the lives of people, and they end up, that's the end of them. So the ocean drugs and the sea drugs, drugs by sea they call it also, that's almost down to nothing, as you can imagine. So they continue to come in by land at a little bit less because they see something is going to happen. They don't like it. They see something, and they're right. Something very serious is going to happen.
Meanwhile, Colombian President Gustavo Petro has announced plans to take legal action in U.S. courts. Petro's response came after President Donald Trump called him a bad guy and threatened very serious action against Colombia over its role in the global drug trade. Petro has vowed to defend himself in U.S. courts, accusing high-ranking U.S. officials of making slanderous claims. Trump had earlier suspended all U.S. payments to Colombia, citing its insufficient efforts to combat drug trafficking. The U.S. president had also labeled Petro a drug trafficking leader and threatened to raise tariffs on the South American nation. This follows Trump's decision in mid-September to decertify Colombia's counter-narcotics efforts, accusing the country of failing to meet its obligations. Now we welcome back our guest, Robinder Sachdev. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi.
It was some uncertain and, turbulent times ahead. One is, America-Colombia relationship is heading into turbulent waters, I would say, literally. And the maritime areas of the Caribbean also both are. It depends to what extent and what Colombia can do, due to which Trump can, let's say Trump can move back or move backwards or step back rather than escalating the matters. We do not know. I think one other dynamic which is playing out, see, traditionally Colombia and America have been allies in a sense, right? They've been partners. And especially in the war against drugs, Colombia has been a partner with the U.S. There is substantial military aid which U.S. gives to fight the drug cartels in Colombia. So the question would be that why is Trump unhappy with a partner who is already, let's say, partnering with them in the war against drugs? Maybe Colombia was not performing as well as it could. So Trump could maybe arm twist them and tell them to do more. But I think the one other factor which is playing out is that you see the Petro, the Colombian president, is a leftist socialist leader. And Trump has definitely an affinity for the right, and he does not like to have left leaders in his neighborhood, especially in Latin America. So part of, I think, Trump's hard stance against Colombia is because of the leadership of Colombia, which is a socialist. Now, in Colombia, elections are due. I think next year elections are due. And of course, there is the opposition party, which is the Nationalist Right Party. Trump would like them to win. I mean, that's what he's trying in Latin America. You look at Argentina, you look at Brazil. He's backing Bolsonaro, who has been charged and faces jail, so to say. So one dimension of how Trump is conducting his policy towards Colombia, I would see from that prism also that the Colombian president is a left socialist leader. Trump does not like Trump socialist governments, especially in their backyard of Latin Caribbean and Latin America. So he is pushing down on Colombia.
And furthermore, how could Trump's personalized rhetoric, we saw him calling a drug leader, etc. So how could these kind of accusations or rhetoric towards President Gustavo impact long-standing bilateral cooperation between these countries?
See, one impact, of course, they would impact relations. By long term, right now, we should say maybe 1 year, because after a year, there is an election. And yes, if Petro comes back, then for another 4 years, it will impact, right? But if after 1 year, Petro loses, the opposition comes, one of their leaders, Maria, she openly admires Trump. So then Colombia-America relations could be on a different trajectory, perhaps. But one other impact of Trump's words is that you see within Colombia, Petro's standing, I think, will rise because he will be seen as standing up to Donald Trump, a bully. So it could help actually politically Petro in his domestic constituencies.
With that, I would like to thank our guest, Ravinder Sachdev, for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you. Now we stay in the region. Brazilian President Lula da Silva has arrived in Indonesia's capital city, Jakarta, for an official state visit. This is the first visit by a Brazilian president to Indonesia since 2008. The visit comes as part of Lula's Southeast Asia tour, which will also include a trip to Malaysia to attend the ASEAN summit later this week. Upon arrival, Lula has been welcomed by Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto at the presidential palace. The two leaders have held a one-on-one meeting where Lula has highlighted Indonesia's role as a strategic partner for Brazil, particularly in advancing solidarity among developing countries in the global south. Additionally, Lula has emphasized Brazil's commitment to deepening its relations with Indonesia, especially in trade and education. He has also expressed interests in strengthening the bilateral economic ties and promoting cooperation between universities from both countries. The meeting has also reinforced Brazil's support for Indonesia's recent accession to the BRICS economic bloc. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.